Welcome everybody to the Wake Up Call channel. I have to cover this ad that Apple just put out for their iPhone 15 called Find Your Friend. Some of you may be familiar with this app on the iPhone. I was not familiar with this app because there's just so many tracking apps out there that we're getting to the point of how do we convince everybody out there to accept being fully monitored and fully tracked with their technology without them realizing that they're building not only a surveillance state around them, they're building their own prison. Well, this is the perfect example to use to show you that. Because Apple released a commercial for the Find Your Friends app on Star Wars Day. That's right, folks. If it wasn't enough already with the propaganda tools that the government's using against us, if it wasn't enough already to make you lose your mind, well, this is a perfect example of how it works, right? Star Wars, which is obviously filled with all types of symbolism. It's an obsession. It's an obsession with people for a reason. The government has made it an obsession for people because they're going to use films like Star Wars, which they're not only programming people with the powers of the Force, with witchcraft and those types of things that I've covered in the past, but they're able to do stuff like this to make people out there not even realize what's being done to them. They're programming adults into wanting apps and things like this. So we have National Star Wars Day, if you're not familiar, on May 4th, apparently, May 3rd, in the United States of America. That's right, it's a holiday in America where I guess dorks get to dress up as Star Wars characters and go about their everyday life. And of course, it's hate speech if you say anything about that because, well, dorks are obviously protected as well in this new world order. The only people aren't are people like us. But this is the commercial. I'm going to lay a different backdrop behind it because of copyright. This commercial was put up during Star Wars Day where they're literally showing people able to find one another using an app. And nobody out there thinks that this could be a problem potentially. Nobody out there is wondering about what this technology is really used for. You think it's really there so that you can go find your friend at a Star Wars convention because you have low service and you don't know where he is, or you can't hear him and call him, or in fact, it's too much work to actually call the person, or even if you can text them, it can't lead you directly to where that person is standing. So we need technology like this where we could literally, might as well, because what this eventually leads to is have a chip inside of you, which is really just your altered genetic code, where you'll be able to be tracked to your exact location within an instant. And this is how they market it to these dummies out there that think this is the government and Apple. Of course, they aren't one and the same, wink, wink, working together to help you find your friend at a Star Wars convention. But what they're really doing here is conditioning you into the mark ultimately and being able to just have everybody monitored at all times. And apparently people aren't even going to care. Look. So this is how this is what you call propaganda 101, right? You play to the audience that they're playing to, which is a lot, the Star Wars type of audience, right? But the people who are adults, right, who behave like children think that this stuff is nothing more than technology just advancing, right? And keep in mind the other side of this, all the stuff we constantly are hearing in the news about crimes and people going missing, that's also being done strategically to get people on board with their genetic code being altered. Everyone thinks it's just a microchip. It's more than a microchip. It's you that gets altered. But we'll look at it from the perspective of a microchip because we've all talked about microchipping people, right? They've conditioned you with chipping your dog. Your dog goes missing, right? Oh, well, it's got a chip in him. We'll go find your dog. And they tell you all these reasons that you need to get your pets chipped, right? As if your pet is going to run away from home, of course. They want you to think it has something to do with is your dog just leaving your home? So they tell you it's stuff like that, or they tell you it's something with some type of weather event that occurs. Oh, there's a tornado, your dog, or a hurricane, your dog is missing. Well, find your dog because your dog is chipped. So these zombies just start chipping their pets, right? Some countries actually require, if you're going to fly your pets, like say you were living in a country over in the UK and you wanted to move to Greece or somewhere like that, you actually have to have your pet chipped. And eventually, we know, of course, it starts with pets and it ends up with humans. So what you just saw there ultimately is the same thing. That's what it is. It's ultimately the same thing. And nobody thinks like that. They see these commercials like, oh, that's neat. I can find my friend. And then they don't realize on the other end, they've been programmed with all these missing people. Oh, we can't find these people. We can't find them. They're missing, even though you couldn't go missing if you wanted to. They talk about the missing children, acting as if they care about the missing children when they know those missing children will never be found. What they're doing is conditioning you into this type of technology by saying, look, we'll be able to find all missing people, all missing children. Everybody will be tagged like cattle, right? The same thing you see on a cattle ranch, where you see cattle walking around with tags on them. Nobody thinks twice. Or sheep on a ranch. Oh, they got a tag on them. Yeah, guess what? You're going to have a tag on you. Just the tag isn't going to be on the outside of your clothes like a prison number. It's going to be embedded inside your body. And ultimately, this technology is the conditioning for that. These types of apps, this is the conditioning for that. But people out there are too dumbed down that they think that this is a conspiracy. They think when they hear someone like me speak of it, they're like, oh, he's thinking way too far down the line. Or he's thinking in crazy terms. All they're doing is saying, hey, it's Star Wars Day. So let all the nerds dress up and go to a Star Wars convention. All the 40-year-old men who are acting like they're 10 still and don't think that there's a problem with that while the world's burning around us and we need men to be men and adults to be adults and stand up against this tyranny that's going on. No. Let's have the adults dress up, and if you judge them, there's something wrong with you. It's hateful. And of course, the government and the media makes this perfectly normal. In fact, they bait people into behaving like this because the more adults behave like children, the more easy it is to deceive, manipulate, and then mold them. And that's what they're doing. And then they know those parents, of course, will pass the technology, et cetera, onto their own kids. So they see this and they're like, oh, this guy's crazy. He's thinking that this has something to do with the government tracking. What do you think, that Apple has just made this? And Apple and the government work hand in hand. Okay, it's a corporation, American corporation. This is communism. So they're one and the same. And of course, Apple, infamous for that first computer they sold for $666.66 that they never want to talk about out in the open, but I've exposed it a trillion times. And of course, the apple itself is representing the forbidden fruit. That's what the logo stands for, the bite. That's why there's a bite mark in it. I get people all the time like, well, they never said in the Bible that it's an apple. Well, that's what they're making it represent, is the apple. And a lot of people would think that the fruit being spoken of could potentially be an apple, but that's the reason for it. And of course, the first computer selling for $666.66 isn't a coincidence either. And if Apple's the one, and I've said this for years, I think that Apple will be potentially, it's going to be one of these big brands that rolls out the mark. It's going to be a big trusted brand. These people don't even realize the brands and the government are one and the same. They don't understand how communism and the American corporation works. So, if Apple's selling it and are giving it away for, these people are not going to realize it at all. And the signs of what is happening around us, you don't even have to look at the numerology with things like 666 in Apple. You can just look at the common sense of what this is right here. Okay? This right here, right? A full-on surveillance state where you could be found and you could find your friends with your phones. And eventually we know it's wearables, it's phone to wearables to inside the body, right? So your friend isn't going to go missing and everyone's going to go, yay, my friend isn't going to go missing. Instead of us training each other to be able to protect ourselves, arming yourselves, having criminals pay consequences for their actions so more people aren't thinking about committing crimes because they don't feel like being, publicly castrated for their crime. So, of course, that would make somebody who has these criminal thoughts less likely to commit the crime. This is all basic human understanding of how the world would be a better place, right? But they want you to just think that the technology is what's going to save you. Oh, we'll use biometric data, we'll scan your face, we'll do this and that way you'll feel safe, and that way you'll be protected. Everyone goes, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, right? So you literally enable the government to create a surveillance state because of your stupidity. That's what we're seeing around us, right? So Apple's out with its latest ad for iPhone 15, highlighting the power of precision finding, right? And again, they make them think it's like you finding your friend. It's the government who wants precision finding to find you. And then again, the motto is, oh, I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't care if the government finds you. Oh, right. So you're just going to be subservient to a government that's rogue. And then if you're a Democrat and all of a sudden Trump's in power, well, you're not going to want him to find you, right? So you probably shouldn't want this type of technology to exist in the first place. But of course, this is all unregulated technology. They're allowed, think about how crazy this world is. These people are allowed to create this type of technology, right? And they say at first, they'll be like, well, you have to consent and sign up for the app if someone's going to follow and track you. But then you don't think, none of these people think twice about, well, if the capabilities are in place, do you really have to give your consent? If a phone can find another phone just like that, and the government then could override that and use your phone to find you. You know what I mean? And then they're like, oh, the government's not going to do anything bad to me. And then, right. You just continually consent into this stuff. So they say a fun twist with the commercials is a Star Wars Day theme where the main character heads to a convention and has to solve the problem of finding friends amongst a sea of cosplay characters. Again, I mean, I don't I don't mean to make fun of people and what their preferences are because, some people get mad. They think I sit here and I'm like, oh man, I'm so cool. I have things that I like to do in my spare time and somebody can make fun of. Okay. I mean, whatever, But when you're an adult and you're cosplaying, I mean, what am I supposed to tell you? Don't you see something when you're 40 or 50 and you're pretending? It's one thing if you want to like cosplay with your wife. I mean, whatever. But if you're out in public dressed up, like you have kids at home and you're dressing up as a Star Wars character and you're going to a convention, everyone will go, that's good, clean fun. Stop making fun of them because you're a bully. How about, we could solve the problems of the world if adults weren't behaving like kids? And I would say dressing up as a character from Star Wars would be an adult behaving like a child. Would it not be? I mean, the problems in the world could be solved if adults behave like adults, but they're not. And the government knows that. That's why they continue to enable this type of behavior. Not only enable it, they promote it. They've been conditioning adults into behaving like children, which of course, like I told everybody who listens to my channel for years, it's called basic psychology. Okay? Basic psychology tells us that when an adult is faced with confrontation and the adult starts behaving like a child, it's just basic regression. So you're regressing as humans, and everyone thinks that we're evolving as humans. And the government and the media and everyone else out there who's in charge and control is pushing this so that adults behave like children. Because you could mold children. You can manipulate children, right? And if you could do that to adults, well, then the government's winning. And that's what they're doing. So this is perfectly normal now to have a commercial where adults are cosplaying for the May 4th Star Wars convention. And then, of course, they say, where are you guys, as you saw in the clip, is followed by a friend sharing a precision-finding link showing how easy it is to locate other people or things with Apple tech, right? Yeah, or other people, right? Or how easy it is to find things. That's how this whole thing started, right? Apple rolled out some of their stuff where they were like, hey, you could find your lost phone. You could find your lost iPod. You could find your lost keys because if you have this Apple keychain on it. Then they were telling you to tag your car with it, right? Don't worry about the ramifications of somebody else tagging your car. How many stories came out, and I covered that over the years, of people stalking their exes, putting these Apple tags on people's cars, right? I mean, it's frightening, right? They don't really want you to think like that, though. They want you to think, well, yeah, but think about the benefits, right? Which, again, is why they keep showing you these stories about missing people. Right? They gaslight you with these stories, like the kid who went missing in Tennessee. Weeks and weeks and weeks it took for them to find him. Like, oh my gosh, they finally found him. Thank goodness they found him. How'd they find him? Well, it was really hard for them to find him. But, it would be a lot easier for police. It would cost a lot less man hours and a lot less taxpayer money if these people had this stuff embedded in them, right? Because then we could track them. And it starts with stuff like this. I mean, this is becoming more and more normal now. Being able to track one another, being able to track this. We've heard the stories about Snapchat. A lot of these crime stories always revolve around Snapchat apps and tracking. And nobody out there has pushed back, so the government's moving forward. And they're using manipulative tools like this to convince these people, oh, look, you could go to a convention. You can find your friend in a crowd, a sea of crowded people. And they go, that sounds pretty cool, right? Because I won't be able to call them because it'd be too noisy. And if I text them and I'm in the middle of a crowd, they can't really find me in the middle of a crowd because it's just a big crowd, right? Great. Why don't you just put your arm out, let the government slice a little cut in it and stick a needle in there and put it right in your genetic structure already. A lot of people already have, but why don't you just do that willingly? And then when they, sew it up or right on top of a little barcode so you could track one another. It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable that we've allowed it to get to this point. But people see, this is the problem. People see a video like this, or they probably won't, they'll be suppressed, but they'll see a video like this and you know what they'll say? This guy's crazy. He's crazy. because they've convinced people with this technology is beneficial to them, because they don't see this stuff with the government that I talk about and the majority of you know already, right? But if you tell them that put Donald Trump's tag on this, put his name on this, that's all you need. That's the mindset they need to have, right? Democrats, people who are, they don't even realize how they've been groomed, right? Not everybody, but the majority of people who are at this cosplay, you could obviously identify as Democrats, could you not? Would you not say that, right? I'm not saying that there aren't Republican people who would go do that, but the majority of them are, right? So they would look at me and say I'm crazy. But if Donald Trump was the one who rolled this out, and it was called Trump, Trump Friend Finder, all those people would say it's crazy and insane, right? So for people out there that trust this type of thing, they're like, well, it's Apple, it's not the government. Well, learn about the American corporation and how communism works. The Democrats are the ones clamoring for communism. The corporations run communist societies, okay? It's an American corporation. That's what we're living in. So all it takes for them is something like that, but they won't think that way. They'll be like, well, it's Apple. I trust in Apple, which is why these people are going to get duped into things like the mark of the beast. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families, as always.